welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about some infrastructure resiliency programs that are powered by XchangeCore. Start out, quick little look at infrastructure resiliency, and then have three different presentations. The All Hazards Consortium has created something called the Sensitive Information Sharing Environment, and it gets some status information through XchangeCore. Tom Moran and John Molnar ended up in an exercise and on an airplane, so I'm actually going to be doing that one this morning. Then we'll turn to Monica Stoffel, who will talk about the California Resiliency Alliance, how it's using SABRE business disruption data through XchangeCore. And then Paula Scalingi, Executive Director of the Bay Area Center for Regional Disaster Resilience, will give an update on the information or info exchange, which has become a gateway to information sharing through XchangeCore. And then we'll open the mic and have a conversation. So let's start out. Pretend I'm Tom Moran of the All Hazards Consortium now. And the All Hazards Consortium is made up of states along the East Coast, from North Carolina up through New York, and maybe one further, maybe Connecticut. And its goal was to bring together public sector and private sector to get business back to business after an emergency. Their recent approach has been to share more sensitive information. For the first 7-8 years that the organization was involved, there was lots of meetings and conferences, but now as we see, lots of organizations are moving towards a more virtual approach to being able to bring their constituents together. And the idea of sharing sensitive information is critical because many in industry, and we'll see that the All Hazards Consortium has focused on the transportation industry in large part, have sensitive information about their ability to move goods and services back and forth. So this has led to a focus on bringing together a number of emergency situational awareness and daily situational awareness tools that are focused on helping move resources across state lines and borders. And Tom was telling me that one of the projects that they've done recently has cut wait time from 10 minutes or so crossing the U.S.-Canadian border down to around 30 seconds, which is money in the bank for lots of people. The AHC as an organization was actually created by states, and as a result has a special structure that allows them to work with states, do state-level projects, and reach out to the private sector through a series of working groups and partnerships. And this that we're going to see is one of those. The Sensitive Information Sharing Environment is the creation of a working group of AHC. And the mission was to bring together information and make it available from two sides. One, the East Coast Corridor Coalition, as a group of states that are trying to move goods and services across the borders faster. And you see the little map there from New York down through Virginia. The AHC created the Multi-State Fleet Response Working Group, and it has spun off into its own separate organization now. But this is the private sector side saying, we're moving these goods and services. We're here in an emergency to try and help you, government. And what are you doing? You're telling us to stand in a line at the border. Couldn't we do better in this day of modern technology when I can put my Easy Pass on and drive through the same border that the truckers are asked to stop? So this sensitive information environment has major focus points. One is it's not just general information, but it has sensitive information in it about goods and cargoes and passages and the ability to move cargo into secure areas in order to restore services. As a result, identity vetting and identity management is an important part of this. Once you're in, you then have a member portal that brings together a lot of different sources of information to be able to display them in a coherent fashion for the users. And one of the principal tools that they use, a top-level application, which XchangeCore can move data back and forth to, is called GeoCollaborate. And it's a disaster dashboard. And we'll take a little bit more of a look at that later, but a very, very nice product for being able to display relationships in a geospatial way across a number of different previously bounded sets of data. The FRG Disaster Dashboard looks a little bit like this. It's got some daily activity things like weather information, has a help desk that AHC runs, some information about, I mentioned the Easy Pass, toll stations. You can get right in there and see which toll stations are supporting Easy Pass and where the, I believe, where the lines are. Fleet movement, lots of tools, and it's a very configurable dashboard to allow you to drag and drop things that you are interested in. What its whole purpose is to be able to get the information there. And you see on the right-hand side a number of different types of sources of information that are there, and these data sources are a prime activity of the All Hazards Consortium right now to be able to create this robust set of data sources. You see Sabre business status is there, weather feeds, the fleet open close services, webcams, just about anything you would want to do if you had to move from one place to another and you were trying to deal with disaster situation. Links into all the states, be able to very quickly identify the status of waivers being given to transportation organizations, and to be able to push that information out into something as simple as road and traffic information and as complex as the sensitive information sharing tool set. This focuses in, I should point out, right in the center there. If I can sort of swiggle my cursor around there, right in the center there is the GeoCollaborate Dashboard. And in that GeoCollaborate Dashboard, lots of things are available. You've got the NOAA weather information, state declarations and waiver status, so that somebody can just go in and say, oh, what's happening in Pennsylvania right now? Pennsylvania makes available their governor's executive order about transportation emergency declarations, and that is consumed into this, and people are able to see the declarations and literally click from New York all the way down to Virginia and just see which waivers are in place. Electric sector, they have a very special responsibility in moving utility vehicles from outside of a disaster into a disaster area, and the whole GeoCollaborate platform and the All Hazards Consortium enable that movement. Live updates, and then in particular where XchangeCore is currently getting involved is in moving the Sabre business status in there, which is joining other sector status coming out of the fuel district and some of the hotel and food establishments, which, as this partnership evolves, will then emerge out of just being available inside of the working group portal and being made available through Sabre, through XchangeCore to Sabre, to other Sabre participants who are not in this geographic area or not participating as part of this particular application or this particular portal. So a two-way flow to expand the data that is going to be pushed back from this into XchangeCore and then finally back out through to the Sabre audience that is able to provide and receive the information that will come out of the All Hazards Consortium. So that's the process that we're following here, and have allowed that to become more integrated outside of that portal. Again, that portal brings in lots of data, but the goal is that there are people who need that information who are not part of the All Hazards Consortium, and certain portions of that information will then be made available out through Sabre and reach a wider audience, to be able to get it not just on the Sabre platform, but through XchangeCore to be able to put it into their own WebEOC or to put it into a Google Earth or ArcGIS Online or whatever it is that makes the data more familiar, comfortable, and usable to other organizations. So great example of pulling consuming data in, one source now being XchangeCore, composing it in ways that this customer set or interest group is interested in seeing, but then also sharing some of that information back out through XchangeCore to be able to make it available to others who are using different applications as well. So that was the sensitive information sharing environment from All Hazards Consortium. And now going to move on to the next one, California Resiliency Alliance. Monica Stoffel will take us through this one. So Monica, you're on.
Thank you. Yeah, so the California Resiliency Alliance also is a nonprofit, and our mission is really empowering local and regional resiliency through the cross-sector information sharing and partnerships. If you go to the next slide, you'll see our kind of three focus areas. Perfect. So first off, it's about connecting people and organizations and really building this network of networks to empower the local resiliency efforts. Another focus area we have is supporting the business operations centers, that critical connection between public and private sectors during times of crisis. And then just general steady state information sharing of tools, resources, reports, plans, guides across sectors, so both across the public and private sectors, but also across the industry sectors. The membership is really comprised of private sector members and public sector members, and then we also have some community sector members in there, such as the American Red Cross and the NGOs, to give that broader perspective and that whole community approach. If you go to the next slide. We also have a lot of partnerships. As I mentioned, one of the focus areas is really connecting people and organizations, and one of the ways we do this is through building a network of networks of partners. And here's kind of a highlight of partners, and one that I realize is very active that's not on here. I do apologize for that, Paula, as I was transferring the list over. The Bay Area Center for Regional Disaster Resilience is also a partner, and there's a lot of interplay between the work that we do. Some of the projects that we're working on that really play with the information sharing, if you transition to the next slide, Jim. Is sharing that information pre and post event, and as we'll see, this is one of the areas where Sabre and XchangeCore will come into play. And as I mentioned, that strengthening the connection between the EOC and the private sector, connecting with the current BOCs and supporting the development of new ones, developing a resource center for plans, guides, tools, and academic articles, sharing new initiatives and good practices, and then fostering the development of that network of networks that I mentioned. And kind of looking now at how we're working with Sabre and XchangeCore on some of these initiatives. One of the things that I've now done is added the XchangeCore information through Sabre and the spot-on response to the California Resiliency website. But it's not going to be active all the time because currently, if you take a look at it, there's no data on that map in terms of what's actively going on, situational awareness information. And one of the really important things is that the membership and the people who view the map trust the information. And if they're logging on often and seeing nothing there, and yet knowing that things are happening in their environment, because there are localized events going on all the time, where there's a single store out, where there's a localized flooding event, And these are things that become larger in our daily life when we're sitting in the middle of it. And so to help mitigate and maintain that level of trust, this map is only going to be up when there's actually data in it. And it's going to be set up so that right now I just need to go in and basically activate the page, activate the link on the home page, and it's done. And then we can let the members know to go in. Currently, we've also have it set as password protected to kind of not do a heavy layer or filter on it, but not also have it just be generally open to the public. But it is a broad network through the California Resiliency Alliance who will have access to it, and it's not heavily restricted. So this kind of interplays with the fact that the map's only going to be up or visible during the times when there's actually content on here. So as you can see right now, there's nothing on it. And currently we don't have a major incident, luckily, here in California. Moving this forward, though, one of the things that I am working on is expanding that pool of companies who do provide information. Since this is the SABRE network that's being used here in some ways, you have the Walmarts, the Macy's, the Walgreens, and those companies that are already set up to feed data into this. One of my goals is to work with Jim and figure out how can we expand that to include additional organizations and companies feeding information into this network, such as the financial institutions. And this is something that also plays really well with, I think, Paula's initiative. So I'll use this as that transition. And if you have questions more about what the California Resiliency Alliance is doing with this, feel free to reach out to me. And Jim, if you go to the next one, here's my contact info. And again, this is still very much in the early stages, kind of developing this out. And it is an interplay with what Paula is doing. And so I will hand it over to, I think, the third case study for how XchangeCore is being used.
Thanks very much, Monica. And I think that the piece that you were saying about turning the map on when making it available to your members when something is happening is very important to understand, because while there may be a Walmart in Santa Cruz that is closed right now, that, as you said, becomes a very important fact for people in Santa Cruz, that doesn't stand up the Walmart or Walgreens or whoever it is, their national operations center. SABRE has focused on using XchangeCore to bring in those national footprint organizations, but now is beginning to grow, as you described, into more local approach. And I think we're going to have a great time reaching out to your membership saying, okay, you don't have to have a big deal going on. If it affects you and affects one community, let's turn it on. Let's make the publication through XchangeCore up into the Resiliency Alliance status map and start to make that more focused on the California area. And we're seeing that happen in other states. In Maryland, for example, while they get all the national footprint information that comes in and share it through through XchangeCore into their WebEOC and their ArcGIS Online, so they're using it locally. But they also have a Business Emergency Operations Center, and they have, I think it was 80-some different members. And what they have they used to have the members all call into them and give them their status. And what they've decided is, after getting that call, instead of having it sit there on a list on the wall, is that they use SABRE to be sort of the clearinghouse for those 80 different members. And when the person in the Business Emergency Operations Center gets a status change for one of those 80-some stores, they just go in, make a very quick change, publish that through SABRE, which then makes its way into their own, literally the person sitting across the aisle from them, into their own WebEOC and into their own ArcGIS Online. So that's speeding the ability of people within the Emergency Operations Center to share the information. And they also have something called Osprey, which is a public viewable site that soon we'll have all that same information available out to the public. So all that being done without a single look at those national footprint stores, although those data come in there. So if we do in fact have something that's happening in Reisterstown, Maryland, that can have all the activity and all the capabilities of the technology without the overhead of having to have a national emergency declared or having the national footprint stores begin to look at it as a big problem. So I think that the leadership that Monica is showing in California to bring in those, I'll call them more local organizations, although Bank of America is hardly a local organization, but those that are focused on the California resiliency component, it's going to be very exciting to see. So thank you, Monica. Appreciate that. And let's jump over to the third one, the National Infrastructure Protection Plan Security Resilience Challenge Project. Paula Scalingi, who's the Executive Director of the Bay Area Center for Regional Disaster Resilience. Welcome, Paula, and look forward to your comments.
Well, I'm very glad to be on the webinar this morning. We work very closely with the California Resiliency Alliance, our Bay Area Center for Regional Disaster Resilience, and other organizations in the Bay Area and across California that work on resilience. We're a nonprofit, and we focus very much on engaging stakeholders across different sectors and organizations to work on solutions, projects that can fill so many of the gaps that we are familiar with when you're looking at large-scale regional disasters. And this project, the Toolbox Project, was conceived by a team of stakeholders here in the Bay Area and actually in other parts of the state who are concerned about regional risk, getting a better handle on that, and particularly infrastructure interdependencies. And we had a strong understanding that to do that, you had to have a cross-sector information sharing system. Really, it's a system of systems that would enable governments, utilities, businesses, other organizations to use their own applications to share information, because everyone has their own systems, and you can't have one single system. So XchangeCore was absolutely perfect because it is a data orchestration system. It can accommodate all sorts of different applications. So let's go to the next slide here. Jim? There we go. So what we are developing here, and we started back in the fall, is a customizable cross-sector information sharing, and now we call it a systems of systems, which is a better descriptor, which is based on XchangeCore, but also it has a very key component here because you need a way to access easily XchangeCore and to enable stakeholders in different communities of interest and groups to communicate with each other, build trusted relationships, and have a lot of those features that in the All Hazards Consortium dashboard have access to a variety of tools and information and resources. And so what we did was we teamed with the Alliance for Community of Solutions, who builds community of interest dashboards across the country. And that's Joe Abrams, and he is working with Jim and XchangeCore and integrating both of those systems. So we have an end-to-end capability here, which is pretty much unique as far as we know it. This is the dashboard that we have developed, which is the gateway. We call it Info Exchange, which seems to be a very appropriate name, considering that XchangeCore is the backbone of this system. And we are modeling this on a system which is being developed at the same time. It's a community of interest, which is the California, all of California water systems, which is called CalWarn. They have their own dashboard, which is absolutely similar to this one, and they are one of our first communities of interest in the info exchange. How the info exchange is going to work is it's a gateway, but it's also a hub. It can connect to, you just heard Monica talk about her business. It's her business, a dashboard that she's developing. That's going to be a major community of interest. We definitely will incorporate. We are talking to healthcare coalitions in the region here. They can have their own community of interest, and some of the counties. Our science and engineering folks here in the region are setting up their own dashboard page that will be all connected to the info exchange. You'll note on the right-hand side there's a map of California, and how this is set up is really to be California-wide. Those regions designated are the official Cal OES, the state designated regions. So you can click on one of those regions, and then you can go to the community of interest member organizations in those regions, and then drill down to specific companies, organizations, to share information with them. Now, we are working on, of course, a member agreement, very important, and security and access protocols. They're all going to be part of this. There'll be a public face for the dashboard, and of course, the private members only face. But, and let's go to the next slide there, Jim. There's going to be a number of different applications and features and resources that are going to be available, from contact information for all sorts of people, documents, maps. We want to have events going on around the region that people want to keep each other informed on. Weather information, again, a lot of the information that is on the All Hazards Consortium dashboard is also going to be on ours. But very importantly, we're going to have a set of resources and training tools for XchangeCore, because the beauty of this is we will be using XchangeCore for organizations, and that's pre-event for risk assessment or preparedness, during response, and then for recovery to be sharing information. So it is meant to be up and operational all the time. So let's go to the next slide, Jim. Okay, so I'm going to ask Jim now to talk about some of the different tools that we're going to have on the dashboard that are specifically related to connecting through XchangeCore. So, Jim, could you describe those, and also talk a bit about looking ahead, and if we're going to have a lot of users for this, and some of the capabilities that we're going to have to build in.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. I'll just give you a little bit more on the technical, but hardly very technical side. There are two different components that you saw before: how to share information and tools you can use. The how to share information section is really the guide to XchangeCore. A lot of things that you could find on the XchangeCore website, but here it's going to be a different organization to that, from the first step to assessing whether you want to be sharing information. We've got tools, forms to fill out, things that you could take to a community group meeting and use to walk through the process of collecting requirements for information exchange. And then a set of instructions on how you would carry out. Paula mentioned a member agreement. There will be sample member agreements for local communities on how to connect into XchangeCore. Instructions on that you take to the IT department that says, okay, this is what we need to do in order to reach from the XchangeCore on Info Exchange and bring that information into my own little application there, WebUC or Google Earth or whatever it happens to be, as well as literally all of the steps that are necessary in order to carry out both I'll call it the legal side of it, the operational side of it, and the technical side of creating this information sharing. So this info exchange is going to do a great service for the community to be able to reach out not just into things that are available on the XchangeCore website, but things that have been done in other projects around the country, around the world, to be able to draw all that together to help you understand how to share information.
Okay, that's great, Jim. And yeah, oh, wait, this is important. Okay,
Yep.
continue.
All right. Yep. The next piece that is related specifically to information exchange on the Info Exchange portal are the tools. This is really the centerpiece of getting things connected. And there are a whole set of things here, and I'm going to take a minute to touch on each one of these to explain what this body of resources are. First of all, XchangeCore connectors. These have been built by people, literally have been built by people from Europe to Australia, and they are available as open source tools. And you can look and say, gee, you know what, I would like to connect, here happens to be one that was paid for by the California Office of Emergency Services. I want to be able to move data out of my ArcGIS online and share it off to WebEOC or to eTeam or give it off to Google Earth. Well, how do I do that? Well, there's an XchangeCore connector that is freely available, running all the time, and this will say this is how you get that connector. And you can get it either as an operating connector, or the third line down there, you can actually get it as the software code. And somebody in your shop can go off and do some things with it to change it or improve it or localize it. So there's XchangeCore connectors. How do I pull in information that's an RSS feed? How do I take a spreadsheet and turn it into a set of infrastructure information that will exist out there and be part of first XchangeCore and then other applications? Say they, oh heck, a whole bunch of schools if you wanted to do it that way, or if you're a company and you want to track all of your employees and you would like to know whether your employees have a problem after an earthquake, you can go in, you can use XchangeCore, move all the data of a spreadsheet of all your employee homes, their location, and then if an earthquake happens, you'll be able to take a U.S. Geological Survey projection of ground shaking, see the homes of your employees, and begin to get a rough idea of who may or may not be able to show up for work the next day. So just some examples of how the combination of those connectors, data sources and feeds, and then if you want to do customization through that software code, allow you to use everything that has been built through XchangeCore over the last years and all the things that other organizations have done and published into our software code repository become available for you. There are also applications. There are some free applications that show the results of XchangeCore information, Google Earth obviously being one of the easiest and most popular ones, but through the Info Exchange there will be an XchangeCore running that will be collecting information, and if all you want to do it is not spend any money and just sign up through Info Exchange and look at it on your Google Earth, you'll be able to do that. Commercial applications, I think this is an important part because everything that you've heard here has to have a sustainability component to it. And one of the sustainability models that's being explored by Paula and her group is through this toolbox. If we promote commercial applications and those commercial applications are sold through the Info Exchange, becomes a source of sustainability revenue for the Info Exchange. So one of the topics that will be discussed over the next year. Community portals, you've heard a lot about that. Analytic models, all that beautiful work, if you've tuned into our sessions previously, done by NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I mean, just brilliant analytic models for both earthquakes and other types of hazards, a rare set of resources that will be accessible through the info exchange. Then you want to host or you want to use an XchangeCore and you don't want to go through the IT components for it. This will show you how to get to hosted XchangeCore services. The info exchange has an XchangeCore, and to some level, for some purposes, if you're willing to share your information with the info exchange will provide its XchangeCore for you to be able to publish your particular information and receive information back. And then also the guide to doing your own private installation, or companies that actually both host and provide private installations. So really the entire package, I hesitate to call it soup to nuts, but it is. It's virtually everything. It's your guide to getting into XchangeCore and using XchangeCore, and then it is all the tools in one place, all the instructions, all the resources to be able to successfully share information. So with that, I will pass it back to you, Paula, now.
Oh, gee. Yeah, as you can see, folks, well, we are so excited about what we are doing, and really it's the closest thing you could get in a way. Everyone wants to have one-stop shopping. Well, it enables you to really do the one-stop shopping, but to utilize those systems and applications you already have. So we're going to be doing a lot of work on this throughout the end of the project. We're going to have a demo up and running for a July exercise we're going to have as part of the Toolbox Project with a few established communities of interest. The system, of course, won't be fully developed by then, but we'll have a number of the different components, and we'll be able to see how we need to proceed further after the exercise.
Well, thank you very much, Paula. Really appreciate that. Paula's contact information there, which if you're in the California area, you may want to become directly involved in this project, although it is a model for other regional projects. And if you have information or want to have information or get some of Paula's experience on how she's gotten to this point, it's actually a great story that I've heard. So feel free to contact Paula. And let's do one more thing, and then we'll open it up to questions. Want to invite you, as you finish up here, to go take a look at the updated XchangeCore website. There's a new XchangeCore video that we developed over the last little bit of time, and the whole purpose of it is to explain XchangeCore in under 10 minutes, and managed to do it in 8. The benefits and sort of design of it in the first 4 minutes, and we spent 4 minutes looking at success stories of how XchangeCore is being used in the last 4 minutes, jumping through maybe as many as 10 or a dozen of them, so that you can see the breadth, the number of different sectors, number of different ways from planning all the way through response and recovery that XchangeCore is used. So I encourage you to not only take a look at that, but it becomes a real easy way when somebody says, well, what are you doing with this XchangeCore thing? Whether they be a colleague or a boss, you can say, hey, you got 8 minutes? This is going to show you that when 2 applications don't talk, XchangeCore makes them talk. If you got data sitting in one system and you need it in another, XchangeCore brings that together. If you're sitting there looking at the web and say, look at all of that data, what am I ever going to do, and how am I ever going to process that in a way that can make sense? That's what XchangeCore Web Service Data Orchestration does. And then finally, it's written there, but the great example is if you're sitting in Operations Center someplace and your neck gets tired from looking from one screen to the other, saying, okay, I see the floodwaters there. Do you think it's affecting that building, or is it a little bit close to that bridge over there? If you're bouncing back and forth and you can't see information from your plans about your procedures delivered into a geospatial or a textual environment that are telling you how close you are to managing the emergency according to plan, where the people are, who's protected and who's at risk, If you're not seeing that conveniently, then you need XchangeCore. The 8-minute video gives you a chance to take a look at that and get a quick glimpse at it, and then continue to join into these conversations.
Thank you very much, Monica and Paula, for being able to join us today and share all that great information. And to the rest of you, don't forget the XchangeCore channel on YouTube, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.